Hello, everybody. My name is National Master Jesse Cohen. This is Someone School of Chess, and welcome back to another episode of Solved, Silman Simplified, Part 2. Okay? Jeremy Silman, world-renowned author, international master, has presented some old ideas in a new way with imbalances and this idea of really breaking down a position into its different core elements and then trying to figure out what the appropriate plans are. Okay, this is some high level thinking, but I'm going to try to present this in a way that is easy to digest. So please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and comment below. And please let me know if I'm doing an effective job. I'm not making these videos for me, they are for you. So if you are liking what I'm saying, if I'm explaining them in a way that's actually understandable, let me know so I can better serve you. With that being said, let's get started. Here's our first position. What is the first thing you should do if it's your turn to move and you haven't started thinking yet? The answer is not to start trying to figure out the right plan. The first thing we should always do is look for tactics, checks, captures, and threats, just like we talk about in some of my other videos. But assuming that there's no tactics for either side, then you should start looking for what the right plan is. How do we do that? Very simple. We have to be able to break this position down in terms of what are the biggest differences between white and black's position. And while we're discussing that, do any ideas come up for how to maybe use them or solve them? Okay, let's look at the pieces. Let's compare the knights and bishops first. Usually comparing pieces is a great way to start. Okay, right now, I kind of like white's knights a little bit less than I like black's knights. These two seem a bit the same. They're both 3 rows up, and they fight for the center in the same way. But remember, the goal of a knight ultimately is to go up the board into a safe, secure home where it can just chill and sit out, because it's a short range piece. It needs to be up close to battle, and it wants to sit there where it can just dominate. Now look at these knights. Black's knights actually maybe have some future advanced squares on e4 and c4, but I just don't see the same for white's knights. However, the story is completely different when we compare the bishops. Black's bishop on e7 is technically good. Now, when I say good, I mean textbook definition good. A good bishop, by definition, is one where the center pawns are on the opposite color is on the opposite color of it. And that is because it will more easily be able to find open pathways, open diagonals for it to prosper on. But the moment this bishop has nowhere to move, no nice open pathways, it is a good, very inactive bishop. We need to solve this issue. This bishop, on the other hand, is a bad bishop. Bad because it's the same color as the pawns, and it's also inactive. Now, how are we going to solve that bishop? It's not so easy. With this bishop, I'm not so sure. We don't really want to move these knights because they kind of want to stay there to jump into those squares. So where's it supposed to go? Maybe we can take this half open file with the rook and sink that bishop back here. I'm not so sure. But what about this bishop? What do we do with this guy? He is just bad and inactive. Bad, again, because he's the same color as his pawns, so he's going to have a hard time finding an open diagonal. And inactive because he has no real active role. When you have a bad, inactive bishop, you really should try to do one of 3 things, according to Jeremy. He says you should either try to trade it off, you should try to move the pawns to the opposite color of that bishop, or you should try to get it outside the pawn chain, because the pawn chain is basically blocking up these 3 diagonals. If I could draw a diagonal, that diagonal. But the 2 diagonals that are open are this one and this one. So if we could somehow get to one of those diagonals, that would be a good idea. Let's keep going. As I was saying before, another key, I'm so sorry, we didn't compare the white bishops. If we look at the white bishops, it's totally the opposite story. The bishop on f4 is a bad bishop. Again, you have to remember it's a textbook definition. That bishop is bad because it's the same color as its center pawns. So it should have a harder time, should have a harder time finding open, useful diagonals. But notice that this bishop is outside the pawn chain, so it has nice, open, active diagonals and pressure in the center and on black's territory. Also, notice white's bishop on d3. Both good, opposite of the center pawns, and active, with a lot of pressure on h7, which is barely guarded just enough, and mobility in both directions of the board. Okay? In terms of the queens, white's queen is definitely more active than black's queen. And I will say, trying to come up with a plan on how to fix this queen is not so easy. Naturally speaking, I was thinking about maybe bringing out the queen over here, but realistically, our pawns are pointing in this direction. Jeremy Silman's pawn pointing method, when you're not sure where to play, usually your pawns can help point you in the right direction. So bringing the queen over to the queen side does not really make sense, especially if we know that white very likely will play in the center queen side. And so I don't know about that. Maybe we could try to activate her like this, but honestly, in this position, I might just wait a while to bring her out. You're supposed to wait a while anyway. We have a lot of other pieces that need to come out. In terms of the rooks, there is a half-open file that is unoccupied for black on the E file and on the C file for white. White does have the queen on it, but no rooks on it. That could easily be fixed for that one. This rook, I'm not so sure. Maybe we have to move that bishop and double it up someday. I'm not 100% on that one. We'll have to think a bit further for that. Other than that, okay, I think that sums up kind of the piece comparison. We could compare the king safety, but I would say I think they're about the same, other than h7 being a little bit too sensitive. Okay, what else can we compare in this position? How about pawn structure, weak and strong pawns? There actually are no types of pawns in this position. There's no pass pawns, isolated pawns, double pawns, but what we do have here are pawn majorities. In this position, black has a 3-on-2 pawn majority on the queen side, or even if that's too advanced, black has a c pawn and white doesn't. White has an e pawn and black doesn't. So it could make sense for white to incorporate ideas that involve f3 and e4, just like it could make sense for black to incorporate ideas that maybe involve b6 and c5, although they will have to be particularly careful, both sides here, because like I just said, white more likely than not will be trying to play on the queen side. Playing a move like b6 creates instant weakness on c6 and a6, where white is probably intending to play anyway, despite how that looks. And so creating those weaknesses, not so sure. Same thing about f3. We're going to play rook e8 probably anyway, and we're probably going to be playing a bit in the center king side. So creating that weakness on e3 might not be the best idea. Other than that, it's really kind of hard to say what, is going on here that's too much different. The only other thing that Jeremy would probably want us to mention is how open or closed this position is. This position is it's more on the side of being closed. It's not locked, but the D file is completely locked up, and half the other center is locked up. It's just not that much open. And remember, when things aren't that open, you can take more time to do things, okay? The more locked a position is, actually, the more you should be thinking, how do I take my worst piece and make it my best piece, because I have the time to actually fix that. In this position, for many, many, many considerations, the correct move here is g6. Why? Well, for one, it's actually going to let us play our bishop out to f5 on the next move, so that we can try to pin it to the bishop on d3 and the queen on c2. And that would allow an exchange of really bad inactive bishop for really active good bishop. Now you might be thinking, Jesse, doesn't this weaken black's king? It does. Typically we shouldn't push pawns around our king unless we have to. But let me be really specific for a second. Black has pushed all the kingside pawns to light squares. And remember, when all pawns in an area of the board go to one color, typically the opposite color is weak. But also remember that a weakness is only as weak as it could be punished. In this position, not only is this preparing bishop f5, but I think black is also going to be playing moves like rook over to e8, bishop drops back into f8. In fact, let me just show you what could happen here. I think if, just to show you these ideas so you don't have to flat out imagine it with me. Come on, internet. Smile on the Jesse. We just want to play a chess game. Why is this doing this right now? What? Internets? Why internets? Why? Why? Can we try again? Please. No internet. No internet. The dinosaur says no internet. No internet. Oh, we got internet. Okay, here we go. So, to show you these ideas, I'm just going to play some nothing moves for white so you can see. So, the purpose of g6 was to support f5, so we can play bishop f5 and trade off that bishop for the other bishop because our bishop is so much worse. Again, though, like I was saying, this does put all these pawns on the dark squares, or on the light squares, which makes all the dark squares super weak. But a weakness is only as weak as they can be punished, and that bishop is awful. So, we already knew this rook was going to go to the e file anyway. So, basically, here's what I'm thinking. We're going to be able to rearrange these pieces anyway in a way that fixes these weaknesses and lets all of black's pieces activate really, really nicely. And then after an exchange of bishops, then we can actually start trying to dominate these center squares in this, like that. And things are looking a lot better, aren't they? It's amazing what it can do in a position when you just exchange off your bad piece for their good piece, right? Everything changes. All right. Let's see if we can do one more. Okay, I'm so confused. I'm on my account. Why is it saying that? There we go. Okay. Had me scared there for a second. All right. What's going on in this position? What are the biggest differences in this position? Let's break it down again. All right. Knights versus bishops. These knights are equal. This knight has a better square it can jump into than this knight, so maybe that has a bit more potential. These bishops are both good and active. This bishop is a bit more active with the queen on c7 because h2 is barely defended enough. But this bishop is a good active bishop as well. This is a bad bishop, but it's somewhat active. I don't know. It's mobile, but I'm not sure. White probably needs to fix this. Maybe if white can somehow get the bishop here, or, maybe play like c4 and bishop c3 and knight e5 and try to gain more space and support e5 for that knight push. That might be a good idea as well. Or maybe it's like the last game. Somehow g3 and bishop f4 ideas can happen, although I'm not sure how white gets enough defense for that. This bishop is utter garbage. It is bad and inactive. We surely need a plan to fix it. Well, how do we fix it? That's a good question. That is an awful idea unless we have some kind of future for it. Now, you might be thinking, well, we could play c5 and open that up, but what does that really do? I guess we could maybe play that, and like that, and maybe that could, if I could draw a diagonal, that actually, that might actually be a reasonable diagonal. Playing for e5, which would fix our bishop, unfortunately, I just don't think is realistic. First of all, it's just not safe right now. They have too many attackers. For example, if we play e5, they just take it, and we can start losing pieces immediately. And if we even try to give it more support with rook e8, they could play knight e5, clamping it down immediately, but they could play rook e1, bishop c3. White has more control of this all day long. I think it's a pipe dream. So maybe we just need to bring out that bishop, either bishop d7, c5, and here, or maybe like b6 here and c5. In fact, now that I kind of think about it, something else about this position we should probably notice is that if you watch any of my other videos, white has a superior center. White is the only one who has a pawn in the center. What do we do when someone has a center and we don't? We smash it. Listen to me. We smash it. Okay, and so actually playing this idea of b6, bishop b7, and c5 actually makes a ton of sense because it both fixes a very, very bad and active bishop, and it also immediately challenges white's center. I mean, it seems like a perfect idea. I mean, the only other things to consider here are we have a half-open d file that's not being used. We could play rook d8, I suppose. They have a half-open file that's being used by the queen, but by no rook. otherwise, yeah, white has a space advantage. And if you know about space advantages, if someone does have a space advantage against you, you should be trying to, well, of course, get your own space, which this other idea does. You try to trade off pieces if you can. You try to, yeah, basically that's it. I guess. Sorry, I thought I'd have a big long spiel because sometimes I do. Nope, no long spiel. You try to gain space. You try to trade off, basically. In this position, though, there's no way to trade off. There's no way to trade off. I'm like pretty positive at this point. b6, c5, bishop b7. The other thing I would say about a good plan is that it should be unstoppable. I see no way for white to actually prevent this from happening. And, again, if I take a look at what white's up to, if white is playing these knight e5 ideas, these gaining more space, and bishop c3 and knight e5 ideas, or knight e5 f4 ideas, or rook a e1, or either rook over here, I just don't see anything that is so pressing from white that we would have to be distracted from our ideas. And we should be equally aware of what they're up to as well. So I'm going to go ahead and play b6, followed by bishop b7 and c5, and this should totally be good. And there you have it. Again, chess doesn't have to be so complicated. Compare the positions. In this position, it all came down to we had a really terrible bishop, and they had a pawn center, and we didn't. And we came up with a plan to solve both at the same time in only 3 moves. How great is that? Right? So, don't just sit there, okay? Like, subscribe, ring the bell, comment below. Let me know if this is helping you. Let me know if I'm explaining this in ways that are actually getting in there and making sense, because otherwise I need to revamp my strategy here. So hopefully this is effective. But most importantly, listen to me. If you have time right now, go play a chess game or go look at a chess position. Find a way to practice doing anything that I was just talking about right now. Comparing some pieces. Comparing this or that. Or do yourself a huge favor and go pick up How to Reassess Your Chess, 4th edition by Jeremy Silman right now and read it. I don't read a ton of chess books when it comes to just, blah, 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 literature, whatever. What I mean by that is when I buy chess books, I usually just buy chess game books. Really, I just look at chess games, which is kind of funny considering that I'm a person that just talks just like right now. You would think that someone like that would love to read people talking, but anyways, hope you enjoyed today. I'm National Master Jesse Cohen. Today is all about Silman Solved Part 2. Love ya. Later. Bye.